up with everything. We're
So
going to
we're
start
starting
at
on your test.
your test. Okay, your test. Okay, good. A chest whose opening is on its side can become tummy with midras tuma and with corpse tuma. Reb Yossi says, when is it so? When it is not 10 tefachim high and it has no rim of one handbreadth. If the chest became damaged at its top, it can become tummy with corpse tuma. If it became damaged at its bottom, Reb Meir rules it tummy. But the common rule of tahor, because when the primary function of its utensil is disabled, its secondary function is considered disabled as well. Regarding a maspelas container that became too damaged to hold pomegranates, the Meir rules of Tameh, but the common rule of Tahor, because when the primary function of a utensil is disabled, the secondary function is considered disabled as well. And regarding pillows, mattresses, sacks, and martufin that became damaged, these can become Tameh with midras tuma. A feed basket with a capacity of 4 kavs, a shepherd's patch with a capacity of 5 kavs, a creases with a capacity of a sa'ah, a water skin with a capacity of 7 kavs. Rabbi Yehuda says also a spice bag and a traveler's bag of any size. All these are susceptible to midras tuma. But if any of these become damaged, they are tahor, because the primary function is disabled and the secondary function is disabled as well. Okay.
Right, just because we've missed a lot of sessions, just wanted to go over a couple of important points. The differences between regular tuma and midras tuma. Midras tuma is a bit of a standout case because it is because it takes on the same level of tuma as the person who made it tameh. So if the zav is an avatuma, and if he sits on a chair, even if he doesn't touch it, even he just needs to lean his weight on it, then the chair becomes an avatuma. So we saw in some Mishnahs that we didn't get to learn together, but like it's metame shtayim aposel echad. It makes 2 levels further tameh and 1 pasul, whereas even like a 7-day tuma, which is tumas mace, is still only is metame echad because the kli itself does not become an avatuma. It just becomes a rishon. It just becomes a rishon atuma. Okay. So I mean, sorry, if it was touched by a person who was an avatuma, right? If it was actually in the ohel mace, then it will also become a rishon, an avatuma. Because then it's getting its tuma directly from the mace, so to speak. Okay, so now chemes chalidim, bagpipes. Bagpipes are impervious to Torah mina midras. They're impervious to midras tuma. Right now, why do we need to learn that? Because the chemes, we said, can be susceptible to midras tuma depending on its size, but this doesn't apply to bagpipes, even though it's a similar type of chemes. Okay, so it's never used to lie or sit on. It's because when the air is forced out of the bagpipe, its walls fold on itself, so making its surface area too small to use as an object to lie on. Okay, or because it cannot function as a musical instrument when one's lying or sitting on it, as a person's weight pressing down the instrument does not allow it to produce the sound. So since its primary function is as a musical instrument, that's actually I find a more satisfying explanation. Since its primary function is as a musical instrument, the fact that somebody might decide to sit on it doesn't really turn it into a midras, because then the person who wants to play bagpipes will say, "Excuse me, can you get off my bagpipes? I want to play them." And the other person will say, "No." Anyone who's heard bagpipes, anyway.
I don't. We've been through this before. I don't like bagpipes. It's one instrument. I can't. The sound just goes right through me.
Do you know why bagpipe players always move while they're playing? Because moving targets are harder to hit.
That's right. Well, I can't take the sound. When I was a musician one time, there was a concert, and I performed at this concert and everything. But part of the concert was this group of bagpipe players who came, a whole group of them, and I had to walk out. I couldn't take it. This sound. Oh my gosh. Anyway, okay.
Arivas pisonos. So a trough of pisonos. Okay, so we're going to have to jump into the commentary to understand what this trough of Pisonos is. It's a large wooden container in which stones and clumps of earth will be transported for use in the construction of walls. Okay, that's according to the interpretation that we're going to follow here. Okay, Beis Shammai omrim midras. So Beis Shammai say people sit on it, and therefore it's subject to midras. And Beis Hillel say tamei mace. It's not subject to midras tuma, only to regular mace tuma. Okay, because it's Beis Hillel argue that while as a functional wooden utensil with a receptacle, the trough is susceptible to corpse tuma, it's not susceptible to midras tuma while it's in use. Okay, Areva mishnei log v'ad tisha kabin. Okay, so now a trough with a specific medium size. We're going to call this medium size. It's got to be from 2 log up to 9 log. Chenislikai became cracked, and it is no longer suitable for its function as a trough. So now what happens to it? Automatically, Tamea Midras, it now automatically becomes subject to Midras Toma. Why? Because this is the standard thing that people do when a trough of this size breaks, is they flip it over and they use it as a bench, because it's just the right size. So it doesn't even need a mental designation. Just remember this, because we're going to come up against this in a later Mishnah. Okay. Now the same bench was left outside, and it was out in the rain, and the rain made the wood swell, and the crack disappeared. Right? Now it reverts to its original function as a trough. We'll say, oh, this is much more useful as a trough than as a bench. Okay. But kadim v'nistika, and so it was used again, and was left out in the sun and in the east wind, and it cracked again. Mekabelis midras, then it reverts to midras tuma. This is one case where you have astringency with a broken kli, as opposed to a whole kli. Normally, when a kli breaks, it loses its tuma. Here, it gets a higher level of tuma because it becomes suitable for a midras function. And furthermore, while we're talking about a wooden kli that becomes more stringent at the end when it's been broken, as opposed to from its beginning, is with the wicker basket. Right, we said it with the wicker baskets that they're not makabel tuma until you finished making the edges around it.
Okay, right.
Okay, once they've been secured, even though it became a proper kli, and then it started getting worn away and broken, and the edges started falling off. As long as some part of the edge still remains, they're still tameh. So it's not as remarkable a chumrah as the case of the wooden trough, but it is nonetheless a stringency of something that's left over, as opposed to something at the beginning. Okay. Makel she'asao beis yad lekudom. So he took a stick and decided, I'm going to use this nice big stick as a handle for my axe. Chibur latuma b'shas melacha. So once the head of the axe has been joined onto the stick, then it's considered one functional unit. And if the handle became tameh, then the axe becomes tameh, and the axe becomes tameh, the handle becomes tameh. If they are separated, of course, afterwards, the wood is just now a stick, and it is impervious to tuma. Okay. It's only a connection at the time of doing while it's in use. Hadiustar. Okay, so what's a diustar? You need to flip the page to see the diagram.
Right. That diagram on the other side, right?
Right. So that diustar is I don't know what the English term is for that, but it's something for winding thread around, and I'm not sure why that's more useful than the original spindle. But perhaps there obviously is some sort of use for it. I'm not trying to be flippant about it, but there's obviously some reason why you'd want it to be like that. I'm not an expert in fabric manufacturing to know why that would be useful. But nonetheless, this is a thing, a diustar. So typically, what you do is apparently you take a stick, and you just shove two metal pegs through it at right angles and and far in a distance from each other, so that you can wind the thread around it. Okay, so chibur latuma b'shas melacha. So all of these parts are, because the part that's susceptible to tumah obviously is the metal rods, because the wood by itself is just a cleate that doesn't have a receptacle. So it is intrinsically not susceptible to tumah, but while it's got these two metal pegs in it, then it is one functional unit, and if any part of it becomes tummy, then everything becomes tummy. Okay, but if they're separated, then they are no longer connected, and it seems like this was something that was done on a very ad hoc basis. It wasn't like you got a special wooden stick and you inserted the metal things and kept it there like that. It looks like it was just sort of a very ad hoc kind of tool that you did. Kavao b'kilonas. Now you took this diostar, and there was a post, and you wanted to give it some way of keeping it still so that it could stay in one position, and you fixed it into the post like on the diagram on 9/11.
Right.
Okay. It is okay, hang on. What is tame? Let's just be clear about which part is tame. Even when the diostar is not in use, its various components are considered part of a single entity. So if a source of tumah touches any part of it, the entire utensil is rendered tame.
Because this post goes in the ground.
Yeah, because by setting the diostar into the post, the person demonstrates that he does not intend to discard the central wooden stick when he finishes using it. So since the components of the diostar are intended to be permanently attached, they are considered connected even when the diostar is not in use. So I missed this point, that the diostar that wasn't connected to the post is not considered a chibur when it's not in use, even though the metal pieces are actually in it. If let's say an avatuma picks up the stick and he doesn't touch the metal does not become tame. It's only if it's busy in use, literally in use with thread around it, then we say, okay, this is now chibur and everything has become tame. But if it's fixed into the post, then yeah, everything is considered one unit, but it's not a connection to the post. Okay, the post and the diostar are not considered a single entity. So if a source of tumah touches the post, diostar is not rendered tame, and vice versa. The post itself is not susceptible to tumah, for it doesn't have the status of a utensil, and moreover, it's attached to the ground. Okay, so asa or diostar. Now, what about the post itself? He went and made the post itself into a diostar by hammering these two metal rods through it, as you can see on page 912.
Right.
Ein tame ela tzorko. So yes, there is a certain portion of the post is going to become tame because now it's part of the utensil, but only the portion that's actually needed for it. You can see there's a part of the post that's highlighted.
The top, yeah.
That's the only portion of the post that's going to be susceptible to tumah.
The highlighted part.
The highlighted parts, exactly. Only the part that needs it. Okay. Now, in a similar vein, kisei shikava b'klonas. If you took a chair, now a chair obviously is subject to tumah because it's a midras, and he fixed it onto a post. Okay, the chair is tame, but it's not a connection to the post. So we say, why is it not a connection to the post? Because again, the chair is an object intended to sitting on. It retains its susceptibility. On the other hand, since the post does not contribute to the functionality of the chair, it's not considered connected to the chair. So the chair does not similarly render the post subject to midras tumah. Okay. Now, what happens if he took the post itself, asabok kisei? In other words, he carved out a nice little bench onto the post, and tame ela makomo. Only the place of the seat itself is considered tame midras. Okay. So in other words, if you've got like a big post and there's just one little part of it that's for a chair, and somebody sat next to it, that's not considered part of the midras. Only the part of the seat. Keva or bekoras beis abad. Similarly, if he carved out a chair in the back of an olive press beam, that part is tameh, but eino chibur la, and the rest of the beam is not considered connected to it in terms of tumah. So that part would be subject to midras tumah, but nothing else. Asa baroshak, he's saying. Now, what happens if he goes to the business end of the press and makes a chair on it? It's completely tahor. Why? Excuse me, you're getting in the way of our work. If it's actually detrimental to the function of the kli itself, then it does not have any effect on it as far as tumah, because the people will say, "Get up, we want to do our work." So the das and even the action of carving out a chair on that spot does nothing, because it's still tachlis. It's an olive press, and nobody wants a chair on an olive press. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so now we've got a large trough that was too damaged to hold rimonim. So we saw that as a shear, that pomegranates was like a size for you being able to carry something big. Okay. Okay, so now remember, we just a couple of mishnayos ago we spoke about the medium-sized trough that was cracked and automatically became a midras. And now we're talking about a big one. And somebody came and he actually made a manual tikkun to turn it into a bench. Rabbi Akiva Matame, Rabbi Akiva says this is clearly a midras. Chachamim matarin ad she'ikatzea. Chachamim say it does not become a midras until he actually makes a physical change. So Rabbi Akiva says if he just flipped it over, that's enough, because it's his das is enough to make it into a bench. Whereas Chachamim say no, he actually has to perform an action. Okay, this is distinct from the case, again, I remind you, the case of the medium-sized bench, there it was automatic that it became a midras. You didn't even have to have anyone's particular das to make it into a bench. Okay, because that's just what people stam do. This being a larger one is not normally used as a bench. Rabbi Akiva says, okay, so it's not normally used as a bench, but if somebody has das to turn it into a bench, then that's enough. And Chachamim say, you actually have to make a physical change in order to make it into a bench. Now, that das is not enough to change its function, because you're actually physically changing its function.
No, go ahead.
If he turns us into an animal's feeding trough, they call it a manger here.
Yeah.
Okay, so an animal's feeding trough is obviously subject to tumah, because it's a receptacle. Now, what is he? But an animal's feeding trough they usually put into a wall. If he fixed it into the wall, now the wall, of course, is in the ground. So does it now lose its tumah because it's attached to the ground? And they say no, it's still tameh. Because the thing about mechuber lekarka is that the object itself has to have originally been made to be fixed into the ground. Just taking something that was originally tameh and nailing it to a wall or nailing it to the ground does not make it mechuber lekarka. It's got to be something that was originally intended or for to be fixed into the ground in order to be tahor. But in this case, you just took something that was tameh and said, okay, I'm going to fix it into the wall, is not enough to make it mechuber lekarka. Okay. Back to Yud Zayin Yud Daled.
Yud Zayin Yud Daled?
Yeah.
Okay. There are some items that were created on the first day that are susceptible to tumah. That which was created on the second day is not susceptible to tumah. That which was created on the third day is susceptible to tumah, and that which was created on the fourth and fifth days are not susceptible to tumah, with the exception of the utensil made from the wing of an oz and plated nam as egg. Yochanan ben Nori says, what is the difference between the wing of an oz and the wings of all other birds? Everything that was created on the sixth day is tameh. If one makes a receptacle in any case, it is tameh. And if one makes a bed or a seat in any case, it is tameh. If one makes a purse from an untreated hide, or from papyrus, it is tameh. pomegranate or an acorn or walnut, the children hollowed out to measure, and in them, or they fixed it to be and of a scale is tame, for they have an act, but they do not have an intent. The beam of a balance scale and a level that have a receptacle for holding metal, a carrying pole that has a receptacle for holding money, a pauper's cane that was a receptacle for holding water, and a stick that is a receptacle for holding a mezuzah and pearls. These are tame. Regarding the law of all these utensils, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, "Woe to me if I said it, and woe to me if I did not say it." Okay.
Next.
We are on to here. Okay. We have Zion Dalet.
Yep.
If the courtyard was separate from the stove, when it is 3 finger breadths high, it is contracts truma via contact and via airspace. But if it is less than this, it is refrat, it is tahor. The feet of a stove, 3 or 3 finger breadths contract truma via contact and via airspace. But if they are less than this, then they are certainly tamei, and even when they are 4. If one of the feet was removed, the remaining feet contact tuma via contact, but do not contact tuma via airspace. These are the words of Reb Meir, Reb Shimon Muslim Tahor. If he made 2 feet one opposite the other, they contract tuma via contact and via airspace. These are the words of Reb Meir, Reb Shimon Muslim Tahor. If they were higher than 3 finger breadths, then from 3 finger breadths and downward, they contract tuma via contact and via airspace. And from 3 finger breadths and upward, they contract tuma via contact, but do not contract tuma via airspace. These are the words of Reb Meir, Reb Shimon Muslim Tahor. If the feet extended beyond the edge, then everything within 3 finger breadths contracts tuma via contact and via airspace, while everything outside of 3 finger breadths contracts tuma via contact, but does not contract tuma via airspace. And these are the words of Reb Meir, Reb Shimon Muslim Tahor. How are these 3 finger breadths measured? Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says the ruler is placed between the feet. Everything from the ruler and outward is tahor, while everything from the ruler inward, including the place of the ruler, is tamei. Okay. Let me just ask you, what do we do? We finished my first Keilim Kazay Aleph. So we're going on to something new.
What?
From here, just continuing with where we left off.
Hold on, which are you talking about? Keilim?
The Keilim, right? Oh, I guess I have the next one. I have to get my next Keilim, which is okay. Next Keilim should be.
Just keep on going in Keilim. We've got another 10 prakim of Keilim before we finish it.
Yeah, so that's base. Okay, Keilim base. So that's going to be let me see. That's going to be Chet Aleph that we're going to start. Okay. Chet Aleph.
Okay.
Okay.
We're in
Arachim. Okay. Vav bet.
Good.
If one, excuse me. Right.
I said
If
good. You can keep your pace.
property and he was liable for his wife's ketubah or debt to a creditor, the wife cannot collect the ketubah from temple property, nor can she collect his debt from it. Rather, the one who redeems it certainly redeems it on the condition of giving the wife the ketubah or the creditor his debt. If one consecrated property worth 90 manas and his debt was 100 manas, he adds another dinner and he redeems the property with it, on the condition of giving the wife a ketubah or the creditor his debt. Although they said we secure payment from these obligated for Eric vows, we allowed him food for 30 days, clothing for 12 months, and a bed made up with bedding, shoes and tefillin for himself, but not for his wife or his children. If he was a craftsman, we allow him 2 tools of each kind of carpenter is given 2 planks and 2 saws. If Elliot says if he was a plowman, they give him a yoke of oxen, a donkey driver, and they give him his donkey. If he had many of one kind and few of another kind, we do not tell him to sell some of the many and to buy for himself some of the few. Rather, we give him 2 kinds of the many, and whatever he has of the few. If one consecrates his property, they assess him his tefillin.
Okay. Marcos.
Okay. Aleph Dalet.
Aleph Hey.
I'm sorry, Dalet. If other witnesses came and they were proven to be Zolomim, and yet others came and were proven to be Zolomim, even up to 100, they are all to be executed. Rabbi Yehuda says this is a conspiracy, and only the first set is executed. The Zolomim are not executed unless judgment has already been pronounced. For the Sadducees maintain so only after the accused have been put to death. For it is written, a life for a life. The comment said to them, but it is not written, and you shall do to them as he thought to do to his brother. Thus his brother must still be alive. Why then is it written a life for a life? For it might be thought that they are liable to the death sentence from the time the evidence was received. Therefore, the verse states a life for a life to teach us that they are executed only if the verdict has already been pronounced. Zion, by the mouth of two witnesses or three witnesses shall he that is to be put to death, died to be to death. Let me read that again. By the mouth of two witnesses or three witnesses shall he that is to die be put to death. If the testimony of two is valid, why did the Torah mention three? But this is in order to compare 3 to 2. Just as 3 can incriminate 2 as Zoman, so can 2 incriminate 3. How do we know even 100? Because the Torah says witnesses. Reb Shimon says, just as 2 witnesses are executed only if they are both Zoman, so 3 are executed only if all 3 are Zoman. How do we know that this applies even to 100? Because the Torah says witnesses. The Akiva says that third is referred to in order to deal with him severely and make his sentence as that of the others. If the Torah imposed punishment on one who joins transgressions as on the transgressions themselves, how much more so will God reward one who joins those performing a mitzvah upon those themselves performing the mitzvah? Okay.
Later.
Okay. Vav. In 3 matters, Rabbi Gamliel rules stringently in accordance with the opinion of Beit Shammai. We may not insulate hot water on Yom Tov for Sabbath, and we may not. We may not. I missed something over here. Something is wrong. I got it. Okay. We may not insulate the hot water on Yom Tov for the Sabbath, and we may not put together a candlestick on Yom Tov, and we may not bake thick loaves of bread on Yom Tov, only with thin wafers. So Rabbi Gamliel, in all the days of my father's household, they would never bake thick loaves of bread on Yom Tov, only thin wafers. They said to him, what shall we do with your father's household? For they were stringent upon themselves, but allowed all of Israel to bake thick loaves of bread and cold-baked bread. He also revealed on 3 matters. We may sweep between the couches, and we may put incense on coals on Yom Tov, and we may roast a kid in its entirety on Pesach Eve, but the concomitant prohibit these. 3 matters Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah permitted, but the concomitant prohibited. His cow would go out into the public domain with a strap which is between its horns. We may curry an animal on Yom Tov, and we may grind peppers on the grinder. Rabbi Yehuda says, we may not curry an animal on Yom Tov because it makes a wound, but we may curry with a wooden comb. But the comments say we may not curry them with an iron comb, and we may not even curry them with a wooden comb.
Yeah.
Last. Okay, pay up. Okay, base Gimel. Everything forms a division for seeds, but only a fence forms a division for trees. And if the branches are intertwined, it does not form a division, and one gives payoff for the whole. As for carob cheese, whichever one sees one. As for carob cheese, whichever see one another. Rabbi Gamliel said, in my father's house, they used to give 1 pair for the olives that they had in each direction, and 1 for the carobs which saw one another. But Eliezer ben Zadok said in his name, even for the carobs which they had in their entire town. If a person sows his field with one kind, even though he does so. So in through threshing floors, he gives 1 payer. If he sowed it with 2 types, even though he did so in 1 threshing time, he gives 2 payo. If a person sows his field with 2 types of wheat, he does so in 1 threshing time, and he gives payer 2 threshing times, and he gives payo. 2 payos. Okay. All right.
Well,
good. Okay.
Thank you. Nice to be back.
Good to see you back.
Yeah.
I'm very glad to be back.
Yeah.
You have to stay in the house still, or are you able to go out?
No, I went to shul this morning.
Oh, good. I know that. Yeah.